The year is 2178, and Earth stands on the edge of a new era. For the first time in history, the planet's space monitoring systems are working flawlessly, scanning the vast expanse of space for any signs of life, any threats to humanity. It's a peaceful time on Earth, a time when the world's governments are preparing for the annual Peace Summit. Discussions about cooperation, trade, and scientific advancements are taking place in meeting rooms across the globe. No one expects what is about to happen. The first hint of danger comes just as the world is gearing up for this historic event. A sudden, unexpected alert flashes across the screens in Earth's Space Command Center. Massive alien fleet detected. The officials are stunned. No one can comprehend what they're seeing. There's no warning, no signals, just a massive armada of ships, dozens, hundreds, appearing out of nowhere, right at the edge of Earth's atmosphere. The fleet is unlike anything the humans have ever seen. These ships are not just big, they are cloaked, invisible to all Earth's advanced radar and tracking systems. At first, the planet's defense forces believe it might be some kind of false alarm, a glitch in the system. But as the fleet moves closer, the unimaginable truth hits them. The ships are real, and they're not here to make peace. Earth's military, though well-equipped, is nothing compared to what's arriving. The ships are massive, sleek, and dark, with no visible seams or joints. These alien vessels are far more advanced than anything humanity has ever created. There's no time to prepare, no time to organize any defense. As Earth's skies grow darker, the alien fleet reveals itself in full. The atmosphere shakes with the ominous hum of their warships as they decloak one by one. The few lucky onlookers who are able to see them from Earth's surface feel a sense of dread creep over them. These are not the kind of invaders that will negotiate. These are conquerors. They are here to destroy. Within minutes of their arrival, the first devastating wave strikes. The alien warships, equipped with weapons far beyond human comprehension, begin their orbital bombardment. The sky lights up with fire and destruction as missiles rain down, hitting major cities around the world. Earth's most powerful defense systems, built over decades, begin to fail. The cities that had once stood as symbols of human achievement are now burning, crumbling under the might of the alien invaders. The camera pans over the iconic skyline of New York, where the once towering buildings now crumble in the wake of an unstoppable force. The ground shakes violently as explosions rip through the streets, sending debris flying into the air. The distant wail of sirens fills the air, but it's no use. The alien ships above are too powerful. Their weapons are too advanced. There is nothing the people of Earth can do. The first orbital bombardment tears through cities like paper, vaporizing everything in its path. Earth's military, caught off guard, can only watch in helpless horror as their world is decimated. The camera cuts to an aerial view of the attack, showing the destruction unfolding in real time. The alien warship responsible for the chaos is the Zorvan Leviathan. It is a colossal ship, far larger than anything humans could even imagine building. As it hovers above Earth, the Leviathan releases wave after wave of robotic drones, sleek and deadly, each one capable of mass destruction. They swarm over the cities, cutting down everything in their path with terrifying precision. Human defenses crumble. There are no weapons powerful enough to stop them. Earth's hope for survival slips away with every passing second. In the midst of the devastation, a lone soldier stands, watching the destruction unfold. His name is Bonner. He's not a general or a high-ranking officer. He's just one soldier, one man among billions. But he's holding something that could change everything. A strange, ancient device, hidden for years in the depths of humanity's military archives. Bonner's face is grim, his eyes set with determination, as he watches the world around him burn. He knows what must be done. The device he holds is humanity's last hope, a weapon created in secret long ago, when the possibility of alien invasion was nothing but a distant worry. Now that worry has become a nightmare. The world has only minutes, perhaps seconds, before the alien fleet finishes its mission. But Bonner is determined not to let that happen. The device in his hands may be the key to saving Earth, but he doesn't know if it will work. He doesn't even know how it works. With a deep breath, Bonner activates the device, and a strange, glowing light begins to emanate from it. For a moment, nothing happens. The destruction continues, the fires rage, and the drones keep coming. Bonner's heart races. He has no time. If this doesn't work, Earth will fall, and everything he's fought for will be in vain. Then, in a flash of light, the world around him changes. The air crackles with energy, and the ground trembles beneath his feet. The device pulses brightly, sending out a surge of power. For a brief moment, it feels as if time itself is standing still. The alien drones in the distance halt, their mechanical limbs frozen in place. The lights in the alien warships flicker. Something is happening, something incredible. But is it enough? Bonner doesn't know. He looks up at the sky, his mind racing. The alien warships, the Zorvan Leviathan, they're still there. Earth's defenses have failed. Humanity's future hangs in the balance, and Bonner is all that stands between total annihilation and survival. As the light from the device intensifies, Bonner feels his body pulled into a strange vortex, the energy from the device surrounding him completely. He's no longer sure of what's real or what's happening. But he knows one thing: Earth's countdown has begun. The question now is whether this secret weapon, humanity's final hope, can truly turn the tide of this unimaginable war. Will Earth's last chance to survive be enough to fight back against the alien invasion? Or is this just another desperate attempt, doomed to fail? As the camera pulls back, revealing the destruction around Bonner, the screen fades to black. The audience is left on the edge of their seats, wondering if humanity's last hope will succeed, and if Bonner's desperate move will lead to victory, or if it will only delay the inevitable. The countdown to Earth's last stand has begun. The attack had come suddenly, with no warning, no time to prepare. In the blink of an eye, Earth's greatest cities had been reduced to rubble, and its most advanced military defenses had been obliterated by the alien fleet. The once proud military might of Earth was now nothing more than scattered remnants, struggling to keep order amid the chaos. The Zorvan fleet, with its overwhelming power, had torn apart everything in its path, and Earth's military forces, unprepared for such an invasion, were left in disarray. The alien ships had arrived cloaked, invisible to all Earth's radar systems. Their technology was far beyond anything humans had ever seen. Their weapons, powerful enough to tear entire cities apart, had left Earth's defenses in ruins. The planetary shield systems, once thought to be impenetrable, had crumbled under the first strike. The alien warships, sleek and deadly, hovered in Earth's skies, sending down waves of robotic drones that swept across the planet, destroying everything they encountered. Earth's response had been futile. Their aircraft and tanks were useless against the alien drones, which moved faster and hit harder. And even more terrifying was the Zorvan Leviathan, the flagship, a massive ship that commanded the entire invasion force. It loomed above Earth, and nothing could stand against it. In the wake of the attack, humanity was left broken. Cities lay in ruins, the sky filled with the dust of destruction, and the air was thick with fear. For the first time, humans realized that they were not at the top of the food chain. They had always seen themselves as the dominant species on Earth, masters of technology, but now they were at the mercy of a far superior enemy. Earth's leaders knew they had to act fast. If they didn't, their civilization would be wiped out, and their species would be no more. The surviving governments of Earth quickly formed an alliance, a desperate attempt to coordinate a response against the Zorvans. The world's remaining military forces were combined, with the best soldiers and scientists working together on a plan. But even with this unified front, Earth was still outmatched. The Zorvan fleet had demonstrated its ability to destroy humanity's defenses with ease, and it seemed like no weapon or tactic would be enough to stop them. But Earth's leaders weren't ready to give up yet. They had one last card to play, something that had been hidden away for years, something that could turn the tide of this war. This weapon, known only as Project Reversal, was a last-ditch effort to fight back against the alien invaders. It had been developed in secret, long before anyone could have predicted an alien invasion. It was a weapon unlike any other, one that used Earth's natural energy to strike at the heart of the alien fleet. Project Reversal wasn't a traditional weapon. It didn't rely on bombs, missiles, or conventional technology. Instead, it harnessed the planet's own energy, its magnetic fields, its geothermal power, its atmospheric conditions, and channeled it into a concentrated force. The idea behind it was simple yet brilliant. Use the very forces of nature to create a weapon strong enough to fight the Zorvans. It was the last hope of humanity. But the truth was, no one knew if it would work. The technology had never been tested on such a large scale, and there were countless risks involved. If it failed, Earth would have no chance of survival. It was a gamble, and there was no turning back. Bonner, the soldier who had activated the mysterious device that had offered humanity its first glimmer of hope, was now a key player in this plan. He had become the symbol of Earth's resistance, and the leaders of the Alliance knew they had to trust him. But there was one problem. Bonner had no experience with Project Reversal. He was just a soldier, not a scientist or engineer. And the device he had used earlier was an ancient artifact, something created long before the war. It was unclear whether it was connected to Project Reversal, but Bonner was their best chance. The plan was simple. Bonner was to lead a small team of elite soldiers on a dangerous mission to infiltrate the heart of the Zorvan fleet, the Zorvan Leviathan. The Leviathan was the core of the alien invasion, and if they could destroy it, the Zorvans would lose their command ship, and their entire fleet could be thrown into chaos. But there was a catch. The Leviathan was heavily guarded, and it was nearly impossible to get close to it. Earth had no backup, no reinforcements. It was just Bonner and his team, an elite squad of soldiers, armed with the latest human technology, but it was clear that their weapons would be useless against the alien technology. Bonner's mission was not just about physical strength. It was a test of his ability to think on his feet, to adapt to situations as they arose, and to lead his team under the most extreme pressure. He wasn't just fighting for survival. He was fighting to give humanity a chance to win. And with each passing moment, the weight of the mission grew heavier. The Zorvans were relentless, and Bonner's team knew that their chances of success were slim. But if they didn't succeed, Earth would fall. There was no other option. As Bonner and his team made their way through the war-torn landscape, they encountered all kinds of obstacles. The alien drones were everywhere, and they were relentless in their pursuit of the humans. The team moved quickly, using the cover of night to avoid detection. They couldn't afford to waste any time. Every second mattered. Bonner's heart raced as they neared the Zorvan command center, knowing that the fate of humanity rested on their shoulders. It was at this moment that one of Bonner's soldiers, a young man named Klein, stepped forward. Klein had been with Bonner since the beginning of the war, and they had grown close over the years. Klein was brave, dedicated, and willing to sacrifice everything for the cause. As the team approached the command center, they realized they had been spotted. The Zorvans had detected their presence. There was no way out. The only option was to fight. Klein, knowing that they were outnumbered and outgunned, made the ultimate sacrifice. He turned to Bonner and said, "Make sure they know. They didn't win." Klein threw himself into the fray, giving Bonner and the others a chance to escape. His actions bought them the time they needed to continue their mission. The team fought back as best they could, but it was clear that the odds were stacked against them. Klein's sacrifice weighed heavily on Bonner. He knew that every life lost in this fight was a reminder of how high the stakes were, but he also knew that they couldn't afford to mourn just yet. They had a job to do. The mission wasn't over. And with Klein's sacrifice, they were one step closer to completing it. Bonner's team infiltrated the command center, where they found the heart of the Zorvan operation. The team was exhausted, covered in dirt and blood, but they pushed forward. They had come too far to turn back. The stakes were too high. As they planted the device that could destroy the Leviathan, Bonner couldn't help but think of Klein, of all the soldiers who had fallen before him. This was for them. This was for Earth. The device hummed to life, and the countdown began. The team held their breath, praying that this would be enough to end the war. They had no idea whether it would work, but they couldn't turn back now. The moment of truth had arrived. Would Project Reversal be the key to humanity's survival? Or would it fail, and Earth would fall to the Zorvans? Bonner's heart raced as the countdown ticked down, and all they could do was wait and hope. The future of humanity was hanging in the balance. Bonner and his small, exhausted team continued their trek through the ruins of the once vibrant city. They had crossed miles of war-torn landscapes, evading Zorvan drones and automated warbits. The weight of their mission was heavy on their shoulders, but they had no choice but to push forward. Every step they took brought them closer to humanity's last hope. Project Reversal, the secret weapon that might turn the tide of the war. As they made their way to the underground base, a place that had been hidden from the Zorvan sight until now, Bonner felt a growing sense of urgency. This base, known only to a select few, was where Earth's most brilliant minds had worked in secret to develop the weapon. Bonner had seen its potential, but the more he learned about it, the more he realized that it was far more than just a piece of technology. It was a force that relied on something deeper, something far more powerful, the spirit of humanity. They reached the entrance to the underground facility, a nondescript building buried beneath the rubble of the city. A hidden door slid open, revealing a dark, dimly lit corridor. Inside, the facility was quiet, except for the faint hum of machinery. But this place was more than just a laboratory or a weapons facility. It was a symbol of humanity's greatest strength. The people who had worked here, the scientists, engineers, and soldiers, had poured everything they had into creating this weapon. But it was not only the minds of these brilliant humans that had given birth to Project Reversal. It was their will to survive, their refusal to give up, no matter the odds. And that, Bonner realized, was what set humanity apart. It was not just technology that would win this war, but the determination of a species that had always found a way to adapt and overcome. Inside the control room, a group of surviving scientists scrambled to make the final adjustments to the weapon. There were hushed conversations and rapid typing on consoles. The weapon was nearly ready, but it needed one final component: the emotional power of the human spirit. Bonner watched as the scientists worked, knowing that this weapon would rely on something intangible, a force that the Zorvans had underestimated. The Zorvans believed that machines, driven by cold logic, would be the ultimate rulers of the universe. They believed that emotion was a weakness, something to be eradicated. But what they didn't understand was that humanity's greatest strength lay in its ability to feel, its capacity for love, for loss, for hope, for survival. As the team prepared to activate Project Reversal, a cold, mechanical voice echoed through the facility's loudspeakers. The Zorvans had found them. Their artificial intelligence systems, designed to neutralize threats with ruthless efficiency, had tracked Bonner's team to the base. The machines had no room for empathy, no understanding of the human will to survive. They only understood logic and calculation. From the depths of the Zorvan fleet, an army of automated warbits was deployed. These warbits were not like the drones Bonner had fought before. They were larger, more advanced, and far more dangerous. They were programmed to hunt down and destroy human life, using cold logic to ensure nothing stood in the way of the Zorvans' total domination. The warbits dropped from the skies, descending with terrifying precision. Their metal bodies gleamed in the dim light of the facility as they began to march toward the entrance. Bonner's team had no choice but to act fast. They had no time to waste. The final phase of Project Reversal was underway, but the warbits were closing in, their weapons primed and ready to strike. Bonner looked at his team. The resolve in their eyes was clear. They would fight. Fight to the last breath, if necessary. They had no backup, no reinforcements. It was them against an army of machines, and they weren't about to let humanity's future slip away. With a signal, the team moved into position. They activated their cloaking devices, blending into the shadows as they made their way toward the warbits. Every movement had to be calculated, every step measured. The warbots were efficient, but they lacked the flexibility that humans had, the ability to think on their feet, to adapt when things didn't go as planned. The first encounter was brutal. Bonner's team struck quickly, using their rapid combat tactics to take down a few of the warbits before they could react. The sound of metal clashing against metal filled the air as they fought their way through the advancing machines. The cloaking devices allowed them to move undetected, but they couldn't stay hidden forever. Every second, the warbits grew closer. The chase was on. Bonner and his team moved through the streets, dodging blasts and using the ruined city as cover. It was a high-speed chase, an adrenaline-fueled race against time. They sprinted through narrow alleys, climbed over collapsed buildings, and slid into hidden corners, evading detection at every turn. But the warbits were relentless. They didn't stop. They didn't feel fear. They didn't need to. At one point, Bonner's team had to make a stand. They couldn't keep running forever. The warbits had tracked them into a dead-end street, and there was nowhere to go. Bonner turned to his team, knowing that this might be their last chance. "We fight here," he said, his voice steady despite the weight of the situation. "We give everything we have. We don't let them win." The clash that followed was fierce. The warbits fired their weapons with cold precision, while Bonner's team used everything they had to counterattack. Each soldier fought with a fire fueled by desperation and hope. They knew that they were outmatched, but they refused to give up. The warbits were efficient, but they lacked the one thing humanity had in abundance: willpower. As the battle raged on, Bonner's team started to dwindle. The losses began to pile up. One by one, soldiers fell, their lives claimed by the ruthless machines. But with every loss, the emotional weight of the fight grew heavier. Bonner could feel the weight of the sacrifices they were making. He couldn't afford to let their deaths be in vain. He couldn't let humanity lose to a race of machines that only valued efficiency. They had something the Zorvans didn't: heart, and that Bonner believed was what would win the war. His team was down to just a handful of survivors, and the warbits were closing in. The air was thick with smoke and dust. The city was crumbling around them, and Bonner's heart was heavy with the weight of every life lost. But he couldn't stop. He couldn't let humanity fall. Not like this. With a final push, Bonner and his remaining team launched one last desperate attack. They activated every remaining resource they had: cloaking devices, EMP grenades, anything that might give them a fighting chance. The warbits fought back, but Bonner and his team were relentless. They pushed forward with a fire that came from deep within their souls, the embodiment of humanity's will to survive. And then, finally, the warbits stopped. They halted mid-movement, as if caught in some invisible force. Bonner looked up, a wave of disbelief washing over him. The countdown on the Project Reversal device was complete. The weapon had been activated, and it was working. The power of humanity's spirit, its refusal to give up, its drive to survive, had been channeled through the weapon. The Zorvans, with all their cold logic and mechanical precision, couldn't understand this. They had underestimated the strength of a species that refused to die. Bonner stood there, his breath ragged, his heart pounding. His team was down to just a few survivors, but they had done it. Humanity's spirit had awakened, and the machines had been defeated. But the war was far from over. The Zorvans had only been momentarily halted. Bonner knew they still had a long road ahead of them. But for the first time in a long while, he felt hope. Humanity had proven it could stand up to the machines, and they would fight, together, until the end. The battle had only just begun, but Bonner and his team were already preparing for their most dangerous mission yet. Earth's remaining forces had finally regrouped after the chaos caused by the initial alien strike. The Zorvans, despite their immense technological superiority, had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt, to fight back in ways the invaders could never predict. Now, with the momentum slowly shifting, Bonner and his team were headed toward the heart of the Zorvan fleet, the flagship. A direct assault on the Zorvan command vessel could be humanity's last chance at victory, but it would require a miracle. In the wake of the first wave of attacks, Earth's forces had been scattered, but they hadn't given up. Military leaders formed small tactical squads made up of the best soldiers, engineers, and survivors from every corner of the planet. These guerrilla groups were fighting in the shadows, using their intimate knowledge of the land to outsmart the enemy. In the rubble of the cities, amid the wreckage, they fought with the cunning of animals, attacking the Zorvans where they least expected it. The Zorvans, with their advanced artificial intelligence, AI, and military superiority, had assumed victory was inevitable. They had expected humanity to crumble under the weight of their overwhelming firepower, but instead, they had found themselves facing an enemy that refused to go down without a fight. The humans were unpredictable. They didn't fight according to the rules the Zorvans were used to. No matter how advanced the machines were, they couldn't replicate the unyielding human spirit that was now driving the fight back. Small, coordinated attacks from Earth's guerrilla squads began to chip away at the Zorvans' overwhelming presence. Earth's soldiers sabotaged supply lines, disabled Zorvan technology, and destroyed key infrastructure in the fleet. The Zorvans had underestimated human resourcefulness. Each strike was a reminder that humanity had something the Zorvans could never replicate: the will to survive at any cost. Every bomb, every blast, every firefight sent shockwaves through the Zorvan command. Their ships, once flawless in their operation, began to show signs of malfunction. The AI systems that ran them were starting to glitch, unable to cope with the unpredictable tactics of the human resistance. The Zorvans' cold, logical machines were finally being forced to confront a kind of warfare they hadn't prepared for, one rooted in chaos, instinct, and raw emotion. As Bonner and his team made their way toward the Zorvan flagship, their resolve grew even stronger. This mission was critical. If they could take down the Zorvan flagship, the entire fleet could be thrown into disarray. But the road was not going to be easy. Their journey took them through the heart of enemy territory, where Zorvan drones and warbits patrolled the skies and the ground. They had to move quickly, using the element of surprise as their only advantage. Bonner's mind was focused on one thing: getting to the flagship, but the weight of his responsibility pressed heavily on him. His team was running low on supplies, and their numbers were thinning. The device he carried, the one humanity's hopes were riding on, had to work. There was no other option. The only problem was that the device was still untested. It had been humanity's secret weapon, but so far, it had been nothing but a gamble. Could it work against the Zorvans? Could it really give humanity the edge they so desperately needed? Bonner didn't have answers, and time was running out. The team moved swiftly through the city, using their cloaking devices to avoid detection. Every corner they turned, every building they passed, could have been their last. The Zorvans were closing in, but Bonner refused to let doubt take hold. As long as they still had the element of surprise, they had a chance. However, just when they were nearing their target, disaster struck. As they approached a crucial junction in the city, the device Bonner carried, a device that had been humanity's hope for a counterattack, suddenly malfunctioned. The once stable hum of the weapon now emitted an erratic pulse. The small device flickered and sparked, its lights flashing in an unnatural rhythm. Bonner's heart sank. This was the last thing they needed. The device had to work. Without it, they were as good as dead. They had no other plan. If the Zorvans discovered their position now, it would be over. Bonner could feel the tension in the air as his team froze, the malfunctioning device in his hand a reminder that they were relying on a fragile hope. Before anyone could react, the sound of approaching Zorvan drones filled the air. A swarm of them came into view, their metal bodies reflecting the eerie glow of the malfunctioning device. The team was surrounded. They had no choice but to engage in a last-ditch effort to fight their way out. The drones descended upon them, their weapons aimed, ready to fire. Bonner's heart raced, but he couldn't let fear take hold. He had to keep his team together. He had to keep them alive long enough to make it through this. The Zorvan drones began to charge, their weapons crackling with energy. The team took cover, returning fire as best as they could. They were outnumbered, and their ammunition was running low. The Zorvans were closing in on them with ruthless precision. Bonner's thoughts raced as he tried to think of a way out. Then, just as all seemed lost, something incredible happened. The malfunctioning device, on the brink of short-circuiting, suddenly emitted a pulse of light so intense it temporarily blinded the team. The blast seemed to ripple through the air, sending shockwaves across the battlefield. Bonner could barely comprehend what was happening as the pulse sent out a wave of energy that swept through the surrounding area. The Zorvan drones, once poised to strike, froze in place. Their movements became erratic, and their weapons powered down. The Zorvan's AI systems had gone offline. In an instant, the once unbeatable machines had been neutralized by the very force that had been their downfall, the unpredictability of human ingenuity. The pulse of light sent a jolt through the battlefield, disabling not only the drones but also the Zorvan ships in the area. It was as if the very core of their advanced technology had been disrupted, like a damper was placed on their entire system. The AI that had once been flawless was now malfunctioning, unable to keep up with the unexpected turn of events. Bonner and his team didn't waste a second. They took advantage of the chaos, launching their final assault. With the Zorvan drones temporarily neutralized, they stormed the area, taking out remaining pockets of resistance. The device had done its job. For now, the pulse had created an opening, a momentary window of opportunity. But Bonner knew that this victory was only temporary. The Zorvans would adapt quickly. They would learn from this moment of vulnerability. The team pressed on, moving closer to their final target, the Zorvan flagship. With each step, they knew they were closer to ending the war, but they also understood that the real fight was far from over. The Zorvans were not easily defeated, and their revenge would be swift. However, humanity had proved something today. In the face of overwhelming odds, in the face of an enemy that believed itself invincible, humanity had found a way to turn the tables. Bonner, holding the malfunctioning device that had momentarily turned the tide, knew that they had only just begun. The pulse had shown the Zorvans that humanity was not to be underestimated, but the war was far from over. The real battle was yet to come. The time had come. The final battle. Bonner and his team had made it to the heart of the Zorvan fleet, deep within the massive Zorvan Leviathan. It was the flagship, the command center from which the Zorvans had launched their devastating invasion. The ship was a monstrous vessel, unlike anything Earth had ever seen. It was brimming with advanced weaponry, cloaking technology, and an army of warbits and drones. The very existence of the fleet depended on the survival of this ship. If they could take it down, they could cripple the entire invasion force. The team had fought through impossible odds to get this far. Every step of their journey had been fraught with danger. They had lost soldiers along the way, some falling to the relentless Zorvan drones, others to the advanced weaponry that the aliens wielded. But they had pressed on, driven by the knowledge that humanity's last hope was contained in the hands of Bonner and his team. Now, deep within the belly of the Leviathan, they were ready to strike. Bonner's heart pounded as he and his team moved silently through the corridors of the flagship. They planted explosives, knowing they had mere minutes before the Zorvans detected them. The countdown had begun. The final charge was in place. Their mission was simple: destroy the core of the ship, cripple the Zorvans' command center, and stop the invasion. It was a suicide mission, but there was no turning back. Humanity's future rested on their success. As the team made their way to the core of the ship, Bonner couldn't help but feel the weight of what they were about to do. The Zorvans had been ruthless, cold, and calculating. They believed in the supremacy of AI and machines, seeing emotion as a weakness. They had sought to crush humanity, to wipe them off the face of the earth. But what the Zorvans had failed to understand was that humanity's greatest strength wasn't technology. It was the human spirit, the will to survive, the determination to fight for something greater than oneself. Bonner knew this was their final chance. The Zorvans could never understand that, and that was why they would lose. Suddenly, the door to the main control room opened, and Bonner found himself face to face with the Zorvan leader. The alien was tall, imposing, and exuded an air of cold, calculating intelligence. His eyes were an eerie, glowing shade of blue, and his voice was mechanical, devoid of emotion. The leader spoke, his words clipped and precise. "You are too late, human," the Zorvan leader sneered. "Your kind is weak. You cannot defeat us. Our eye is perfection. You cannot win against us. Machines are the future. Your pitiful species will be wiped out." The Zorvan leader's eyes flashed, and without warning, he lunged at Bonner. The two collided in a fierce, close-quarters fight. The Zorvan leader was strong, much stronger than Bonner, his alien physique giving him an edge in the battle. But Bonner had something the leader didn't: human determination. With every strike, Bonner fought back with the strength of 1,000 humans. His moves were unpredictable, driven by instinct and emotion, while the Zorvan leader relied on the cold logic of his programming. The fight was brutal. The two clashed again and again, their weapons sparking with every blow. Bonner took a punch to the face, but he didn't falter. He fought through the pain, using every ounce of his strength to bring the Zorvan down. The leader's smugness faltered as he realized that Bonner wasn't going to give up. He was more than just a human. He was the embodiment of the spirit that had carried humanity through every challenge they had ever faced. And that spirit was unstoppable. In a final, desperate move, Bonner disarmed the Zorvan leader and knocked him to the ground. He stood over him, weapon in hand, ready to deliver the final blow. The Zorvan leader looked up at him, his eyes filled with a mix of anger and disbelief. How is this possible?" the leader gasped. "You are nothing but an insignificant species." "We're a species that never gives up," Bonner said, his voice cold and unwavering. "And that's why you'll lose." With a swift motion, Bonner ended the fight, the leader falling lifeless to the ground. The room fell silent. Bonner stood over the alien, his breath heavy, but his resolve stronger than ever. The Zorvans had lost. Their leader was dead. The fleet was now vulnerable. But the mission was far from over. Bonner turned to the rest of his team, who had been waiting for the signal to activate the final charge. He nodded to them. It was time. With the Zorvan leader out of the picture, the team quickly made their way to the core of the Leviathan. Bonner activated the device, the final weapon humanity had been holding on to. The pulse of energy that had been so unpredictable earlier now hummed with purpose. It was ready. The countdown was ticking. The device was placed at the heart of the ship, and Bonner hit the final switch. A blinding pulse of energy shot out from the core, radiating through the Leviathan like a shockwave. The Zorvans' technological superiority was no match for the power of humanity's final weapon. The ship's systems began to short-circuit, and the once mighty fleet began to fall apart. The Zorvans' eye, the backbone of their power, was rendered useless. The Zorvans, once so confident in their invincibility, were now vulnerable. With their flagship crippled, they had no control over their fleet. The remaining ships began to malfunction, their systems crashing one by one. The Zorvans had no choice but to retreat, their once imposing armada reduced to chaos. The human resistance seized the opportunity. With the Zorvans in disarray, Earth's remaining forces launched a final assault. The skies above were filled with ships, both human and alien, as the resistance tore through the remaining Zorvan vessels in a high-speed, explosive space battle. Missiles flew, ships exploded in bursts of fiery light, and the remnants of the Zorvan fleet were wiped out, one by one. In the end, it was clear: humanity had won. The Zorvans were defeated, their invasion thwarted. Earth was saved, not by advanced technology or cold logic, but by the very thing the Zorvans had underestimated, the human spirit. Bonner stood at the helm of the remaining human forces, watching the last of the Zorvan ships retreat into the void. He had fought and sacrificed everything to get to this point. He had seen his friends fall, faced impossible odds, and fought against an enemy that seemed unbeatable. But in the end, humanity had triumphed. As the dust settled, Bonner took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the stars. Earth had survived. But the true victory was not in defeating the Zorvans. It was in the realization that, no matter the enemy, no matter the odds, humanity would always rise up. The battle was over, but the war, for humanity's future, was far from finished. The victory over the Zorvans had come at a heavy price. Earth was left in ruins, with cities reduced to rubble, once thriving landscapes now barren, and the scars of war etched into the very planet itself. The Zorvans had come with advanced weapons and strategies, thinking they could crush humanity with ease, but they had underestimated the very thing that had made humanity so resilient, the will to survive. Despite the overwhelming odds, humanity had fought back with everything they had. The Zorvans were defeated, their invasion halted. But now, the true challenge had begun. Bonner stood alone amidst the wreckage, the last survivor of his team. His heart ached as he looked out over the desolate landscape. He had seen it all, the fierce battles, the lost comrades, the impossible odds. His friends had given their lives for this moment, and now, as the dust settled, it was clear that Earth had won. But the cost was high. Bonner's body was bruised, battered, and covered in the dust of battle. His clothes were torn, and his face bore the marks of the countless struggles he had endured. But his eyes, though tired, burned with determination. The battle for Earth was over, but the fight for the future of humanity was just beginning. The Zorvans had taken everything from Earth, their cities, their technology, their people. But they had failed to take the most important thing of all, humanity's resolve. As Bonner walked through the ruins of what once was a bustling city, he couldn't help but think about the lives lost, the families torn apart, and the sacrifices made. His team was gone. His friends were gone. The faces of the fallen soldiers lingered in his mind, their last words echoing in his thoughts. But there was no time for mourning. The work had only just begun. The survivors, though few, were resilient. Earth's governments were in disarray, and the world was left to pick up the pieces. But Bonner knew one thing for certain: humanity would rebuild. The planet might be broken, but the spirit of its people was stronger than ever. They had faced an enemy that seemed unstoppable, and they had emerged victorious. Now, the true task was to rebuild, to recover, and to rise from the ashes. The future was uncertain, but as long as there was life, there was hope. The news of humanity's victory spread quickly across the galaxy. News outlets and alien civilizations alike were shocked by the underdog victory. The Zorvans had been the most powerful empire in the galaxy, feared by all. They had conquered planet after planet, expanding their empire with ruthless efficiency. But humanity had done the impossible. Against all odds, against the most advanced technology, and an AI-driven army, Earth had fought back and won. The Zorvans' defeat was a symbol of hope, not just for humanity, but for all those who had ever been oppressed by a greater power. The galaxy now knew one thing for certain: never underestimate the will of humanity. The underdog species had taken down the seemingly unbeatable empire, and the story of their victory would be told for generations to come. A tale of resilience, courage, and the indomitable human spirit. But even as humanity celebrated its victory, there was a sense of loss. The cost of the war had been immense, and the scars of the battle were visible everywhere. People walked through the streets, their eyes filled with both pride and grief. There were no grand parades, no loud celebrations. The survivors knew that the victory, though sweet, came with a deep sense of sorrow. The world had lost so much in the conflict. Families mourned, communities rebuilt, and a quiet determination spread across the earth. Bonner stood at the memorial for his fallen comrades, his gaze fixed on the stone monument that stood before him. It was a tribute to the soldiers who had given their lives in the battle. The names of those who had fallen were etched into the cold stone, each one a reminder of the price paid for this victory. The wind blew softly, carrying with it the scent of fresh earth. Bonner's hand rested on the stone, his fingers tracing the names. He thought about all those who had been lost, the ones who had fought beside him, the ones who had given everything for the future of Earth. A single tear fell from Bonner's eye, tracing a path down his dirt-covered face. It was a tear for the fallen, for the friends he had lost, for the Earth that had been broken. But it was also a tear of hope, because in that moment, Bonner knew something that no alien empire could ever take away. Humanity had endured. They had fought back against impossible odds, and they had emerged stronger. The tears were not just for the loss. They were for the future. Humanity would rebuild. They would rise again, even stronger than before. As Bonner stood there, lost in thought, he felt the presence of others behind him. Survivors of the war, the brave men and women who had fought for Earth's future, gathered around the memorial. Together, they stood in silence, honoring those who had given their lives. They stood not as individuals, but as a united front. Humanity had faced its darkest hour, and they had survived. They would continue to survive, no matter what came next. Bonner wiped away the tear and turned to face the crowd. His voice was steady, but there was a deep emotion behind it. "We've lost so much," he said, his words carrying through the quiet air. "But we've gained something too. The Zorvans thought they could break us. They thought they could destroy us. But they were wrong. We're still here. And we will rebuild. We will rise from the ashes of this war, and we will show the galaxy what humanity is capable of." His words echoed through the crowd, and for a moment, there was complete silence. Then, one by one, the survivors nodded, their faces filled with resolve. They understood. The fight for Earth's future was not over. It had only just begun. The galaxy would remember humanity's victory, but humanity would remember its strength. The strength to survive, the strength to adapt, the strength to never back down, no matter how overwhelming the odds. As Bonner looked out at the survivors, his heart swelled with pride. The flame of hope burned brighter than ever before. Humanity had proven its worth, not just to the galaxy, but to itself. The victory over the Zorvans was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter in which humanity would rise, rebuild, and thrive. And as the sun set on the broken Earth, Bonner knew one thing for certain. Humanity's journey had just begun. They would never back down. Not now. Not ever.